I'm John Hazel, automation expert and business strategist.
And I'm Kevin Miller, software lead and seasoned podcaster.
And this is the Automate and Elevate podcast, where we help you build systems, create leverage, and scale your business.
Yeah, on today's episode, we're going to get into the airplane framework. I'll let you explain a little bit more about that, John. Who is the author, and tell us a little bit more about this framework.
Yeah, so there's an author that I've been following for almost a decade now. His name is Donald Miller, and he created a great model called Story Brand that for me is like the place to start when it comes to marketing and messaging and branding and making sure that you're communicating the same message over and over. So that was like really where he started in the business world. Before that, he was a memoirist writing books that some of them did very well. And now, after Story Brand, he started something called Business Made Simple. And he started kind of expanding beyond just the marketing and messaging and branding and expanding into all of helping people understand business and run their small businesses. So I want to talk about his model, the airplane model, and how this is kind of the fundamentals of the things that you need to give attention to every week to make sure your business is growing and not dying.
So, yeah, what is it about this model that you decided to study it, and what made you want to kind of dig deeper into this?
Yeah, so I'm an INTP on the Myers-Briggs. INTP. If you've ever taken the Myers-Briggs 4-letter, it's very like controversial for a lot of people. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to be put in a box or whatever. But Carl Jung figured out these 8 cognitive functions. And the more you look at it and reflect on the people in your life, the more clear it is that he brought things down to the fundamentals when it comes to cognitive functions. And so as an INTP, I'm able to kind of map those cognitive functions. So INTP means introverted thinking, which is like all about accuracy, is my driver personality. If you want to know more about this, you should look up the Personality Hacker podcast. Amazing podcast that taught me so much about this. But because introverted thinking is my driver function, I love frameworks that are the fundamentals. They are the first principles. They are the building blocks that everything else can build off of, right? And so I'm always hunting for what are those things. To me, Story Brand is that for messaging. It's like this is a fundamental thing, and if you use it, it will work, period. A lot of models, frameworks, systems that people present are opinionated, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think there's a place for that because you're always trying to find the people that your mind kind of syncs up with, the people that think the way you think, and you're trying to adopt their opinionated system. And you take the things that work and you throw out the things that don't, and that's great. You'll learn a lot that way. You should be absorbing as much information and education as you can. But for me, like the things that I cling to the most are when I find something that's like, this is a fundamental framework. This is a first principles type thing. And to me, I think Donald Miller does this well at distilling things down to the atomic level. And so I've heard it said before, basically, if you can't communicate it simply, you don't understand it well enough, right? So anyway, that said, I'd love to show the model if you're able to pop that up to where it's visible. So the leadership, like if you think of an airplane, and your business is like an airplane, then the cockpit is your leadership. In the cockpit is where the heading, the direction of the airplane gets set, right? So as a business leader, you're setting the direction of your business, direction of your airplane. And the thing is that if something drifts and the heading that you're supposed to be on is off, and you're off by 5 degrees, then you're going to end up in a completely different place when you're flying 500 miles, 1,000 miles, right? So we have to continually come back and check, are we still on the right heading? Have the winds changed? Has something changed that's pushing us in a different direction than we intended to go, right? Cockpit is leadership. And then the engines, you have marketing is your right engine, and sales is your left engine. Now you can get by on one engine, right? Like you can have a single engine airplane, especially as a small business. But scale is usually going to come from having both. So what attention are you giving to each one each week? And I'm not saying, certain weeks, well, I'll get into that. But anyway, then you have the wings, which are your actual products or services. These are the things that give you lift and get you into the sky and take you somewhere, right? And then you have the body of the plane, which is your overhead. This is operating expenses. This is the thing that you need to have because everything else relies on being able to, like your cargo, your products, your services, they need a way to go. And so you got to have the body, but you want to keep it as lean, as streamlined, as slick as possible, as long as you can, so that you can maximize your flight distance. And that ties directly into the fuel of the airplane, which is your cash flow. So the, different, if your overhead is small, if the body of the airplane is small, then your cash flow, your fuel is going to take you a lot further. If you start the trip, if you're trying to go from LA to New York City and you start with a quarter tank in your airplane, you might not make it. So making sure you have enough cash to get there. And it's specifically, we say cash flow, because cash isn't meant to sit statically. It needs to flow. It needs to be fluid. And the fuel isn't meant to sit forever in fuel reserves. Like the fuel needs to be burned. The cash needs to be burned, but we need to burn it strategically. We need to be efficient, right? So when you bring all those things together, those are 6 things. The cockpit is your leadership. The right engine is your marketing. Left engine is your sales. The wings are your products or services. The body of the plane is your overhead, and the fuel is your cash flow. Okay. So I try to make sure every week I'm giving some level of attention to these 6 things. I have a routine every week where I'm reviewing the overhead, the expenses, the cash flow, and seeing, can I reduce overhead? Can I increase income, cash flow, right? What outstanding invoices do I have? If I don't give attention to this for a few weeks, then all of a sudden I can run out of cash because I haven't been paying attention to it, right? If I don't pay attention to my services and the quality that my team is outputting, then all of a sudden I've got these weak wings that aren't carrying the airplane as far as it needs to go or as high as it needs to go, right? If I don't pay attention to sales at all, I'm effectively running on one engine. I'm running on marketing, or vice versa, right? And then I'm lopsided and my plane is not going as far as it needs to, right? If I don't pay attention to how am I leading my company, then all of a sudden we're going in a different direction than I ever intended to. Make sense?
Yeah. So I mean, there's quite a bit to focus on. So how do you choose what to focus on and when?
Yeah. I mean, you can go by the vibes. And sometimes that's what we do, is like a reactive, like a lot of times like solopreneurs get completely locked into this and providing their services. This obviously just says products, but you can replace that with services. They get completely caught up in that piece and forget to spend any time on their marketing or their sales. And then all of a sudden one contract ends and they're dried up and they're freaking out trying to find the next client, the next contract. So that's why whatever it looks like for you, right? Which is why this is what I love about finding simple frameworks. Is like I'm not going to dictate and say you should have this habit. On Monday you should focus on this thing. On Tuesday it's going to be different for everybody. But you need to find in your rhythms, how am I ensuring that I'm focusing on all of these things each week? And some weeks maybe it's 5 minutes on one of them, and other weeks maybe it's 5 hours or 3 days. The weights are going to be different depending on the week and what is the pressing priority.
So you're like, how do you determine when you focus too much on one and too little on the other?
I think there's ways to see it early. And I'm going to talk about this on another episode, the 4 disciplines of execution. Because if you've set your metrics, you've set your measures, and you know what you're aiming for and what you're expecting, and you also know what your controllables are that you're supposed to be doing every week or every day, then those things give, especially the controllables, gives indicators to whether you are on the right track or not, whether you're giving enough attention to that area or not, right? And these can be quantitative or qualitative things. So if you set for yourself and for your business, what are the things that I'm monitoring to know the health of each area of my airplane, and you monitor those things on at least a weekly basis, then you're going to know where are the things I'm not giving attention to.
So yeah, can you give us like some tangible stories of how you took this framework and you applied it to your business and seen benefit from it? Like how are people, if they get a hold of this framework, how are they realistically going to apply this to their business?
Yeah, I think this podcast is an example. Is like, I knew I needed a marketing engine because my entire business has been like referral, just word of mouth networking, and also attending networking meetings and connecting with people. And I love that. I love the face to face. But it's like I also grew up in this online world, and so I understand the importance and value of it. I just had this resistance towards putting my face out there. Like as social media transformed into what it is today, like the further along we got, the more resistance I had to even engaging in social media, because I really enjoyed Instagram in like 2011, 2012. I enjoyed Facebook in like 2009, 2010. And it's just a whole different digital world now. I remember when I was getting tons of ads for TikTok and I was like, what is this stupid thing? And then, and then it took off. I mean, that was a strategic, well-backed, anyway, I know I'm off on a rabbit trail, but the point is, like, you and I talked and I was like, I just need to do a podcast because I'm not great at the like holding my phone in front of my face and telling a story and doing reels that way. Like if I'm talking to somebody, then I'm going to be able to share things that are valuable for people. But it's much harder for me to do that just to my camera on my phone by myself. So I knew I needed to do something about the marketing engine. And so our lead measures are, we got to record every week to make sure that we're not getting behind, or for the most part, right? Like we create a few episodes at a time to try and make sure we're not having a week where we don't have a podcast published, right? So we created a system and a process to make sure that right engine is taken care of. And those lead measures, those controllables are, when are we recording? The next controllable is my team has to post it. My team has to clip it for YouTube shorts and reels and everything. And so we created those controllables that, like, all right, every week you're going to make sure that these, we're putting out whatever number it is, like one podcast per week and then a number of shorts. And so we set those controllables in place. The lag measures, the metrics that are after the fact are, how many views are we getting? How many subscribers, followers, right? And those things I don't have direct control over. I have direct control over, are we publishing? Are we pushing? And if I'm needing more, okay, maybe do we need to promote? Do we need to, set up a paid ad for a YouTube short or a reel or whatever? So anyway, that's an example of how this worked. Is like, before I was a one engine airplane, I was just running on sales. Then I said, okay, every week we need to give some attention to marketing. And I set a rhythm, a ritual, a habit around making sure it's getting attention.
So if like a client was to approach you and you were to apply this framework to their business, like, I know clarity might be one thing that they benefit from, but like what are some of the other things that they would benefit from if they requested coaching from you to bring this to their business?
Yeah. Yeah, clarity is number one. I think I crave those light bulb moments. I love when somebody just like it clicks and I can see it click in their mind, right? So that's the first thing, because you got to be inspired. You got to be excited about it. You got to see it in your mind's eye before you can see it happen in your business. So the first thing is like getting to that point of clarity, of inspiration, of vision and direction, which is the leadership piece right here, the cockpit piece, right? The second thing is, okay, what are you currently doing in each of these areas? And like, are we hemorrhaging cash? Is our overhead too high? Do we have too many people? Do we have too many SaaS softwares that are just draining us every month. Like, how do we get this overhead into a healthy place? And a high overhead is not necessarily a bad thing. It just depends on what business you're in. And you just got to make sure that the income is greater than the outgo, that you're profitable, right? And sure, there's like, there can be years of lack of profitability because you're investing in something for the long term and you're in a place to be able to do that. That's okay. But obviously, we want to be profitable as soon as possible. And so we would evaluate the numbers. We'll look at the products and services. Like, is there quality, or are there any improvements we need to have there? We look at the sales and marketing. Are we effectively going to the places we need to go? Are we hitting our target audience? Do we know who our target audience is very clearly, and making sure we're in those right places, right? Back to the overhead thing is like, what are the things we can automate? What are the things we can make more efficient? Like, we're in an AI era, and we are in an agentic AI area, but we're just at the beginning of it. So we're not really in a place where you can unleash a generalist AI agent on an area of your business and it just solves problems. Like, in theory, you can do that with OpenClaw and all these different tools, Claude Code, but like, it still requires some really good human in the loop tactics. And then, so basically, we're in this hybrid era where we need to set up like specific streamlined automations and have AI pieces in that, where it's like, in the past, you would have had to have a human in the loop on this specific workflow, but now we can put an AI in that part and just have a human at the end of it or whatever, right? So we figure out what are those things we can automate to reduce that overhead. We figure out what are the areas where you should be selling and you're not selling. How can we make that sales engine beefier, right? What are the areas you should be marketing in that you're not marketing in? How can we make that marketing engine beefier? What are the areas where you're not leading your team, where you're not developing your team? I have a framework for people development that is like, the purpose is to help make sure that you have the rock star team. You have an A team. You're happy with your team. You believe that they can accomplish what you need to accomplish. And so I've been guilty of this lately. I'm just gonna be like super vulnerable right now. Like, lately, I have not been focused on the leadership side. Everything for me has been focused on new revenue, on sales and marketing. I've had some focus on the wings, on the products and services. And I've had a maintaining level of focus on my overhead and cash flow. But I haven't been focused on how can I develop and grow my team? How can I make them better at their jobs? How can I add value to their lives where they're feeling like I'm learning things and growing in ways that I wouldn't be if I weren't on this team, right? So I think it's important to then, first of all, it helps to bring somebody in from the outside that can look and say, I don't know what you see, but this is what I see, right? You get a different perspective. And second, just to have a mirror, just to be able to bounce things off of and reflect and be like, okay, I see that I need to grow in this area.
Right. So, like, with all of these 6 things, is this something that you, as the, like the CEO, do you have to do all of these, or is this something like you pick whatever you're most effective in and then delegate the rest out to, whoever's the most effective on your team at accomplishing that particular aspect?
Yeah. As the CEO, you can never delegate all of this fully, right? Like, this is literally what the C-suite is for, right? As the CEO, you're in charge of the cockpit, obviously. And so then you've got your CMO that's focused on the marketing engine. You might have there's different terms for it. Sometimes CRO can be marketing and sales, or whatever, maybe you have your VP of sales or your president of sales. You have your financial director or your CFO that's focused on the cash flow. You might have your IT director who's kind of focused on the overhead. How are we streamlining? That's like one of the things that they're focused on, or your CIO. Depending on the business and what you're in, right? You might have your your chief product officer. You have somebody that's focused on evolving your products, right? But as a CEO, you still have to give attention to all these things every week. And even as like one of these, any of the C-suite seats that I just listed off, like they're responsible for their book of business typically. So, the CMO has to be mindful of his overhead or her overhead, the actual budget that they're running in the marketing department, right? Like they're thinking through that stuff so they're not being wasteful. I mean, it'd be great if they have unlimited budget, but for the most part, typically all of these areas are going to have their own budgets and they have to steward those. So it's like all of this kind of um, applies downstream in larger organizations because you end up with several different books of business. Does that make sense?
Right. I think this is a great stopping point for this episode. Just to wrap things up, like what is your closing thought? What do you want to impart on the audience before we shut this one down?
Yeah. Just think about this. What is the area of these 6 areas that you have not been focused on that you need to focus on this week, that you need to build a habit for this week? And think about how can I, set a reminder for myself, slot a time in my calendar, set up a weekly meeting with the appropriate team member, or do I just need to bring on a consultant because I'm not even sure which area or I'm not sure how to proceed with the area I know I need to work on, right? Take an action this week, please.
And if somebody wanted to reach out for coaching or just to hire you and get your services, where's the best place for them to reach you at?
Yeah, typically LinkedIn is great. You can reach me there. I'm on all the social platforms. You can DM me. You can email me at john@johnhazel.com. You can learn more about me and my businesses at johnhazel.com. And I'd love to connect.
So JOHNHAZEL.
Yes, sir.
All right. And we appreciate everybody for tuning in. We're going to catch y'all next episode.